South Park has an absolutely massive gallery of side characters, and for me, one of the most underrated has gotta be Clyde Donovan.
Hey, what's going on?
Clyde is another character that's actually been around since day one, but he only really started to get a spotlight as the show continued. In fact, he's been getting more love than ever in recent years, though like most veteran South Park characters, his place in the dynamic of the show is anything but straightforward. So join me, and don't forget to put the toilet seat down as we discuss South Park's Clyde Donovan.
Hey, I'm just trying to make my nut, man.
It's never explicitly stated, but to me, Clyde feels like a sort of spiritual counterpart to Craig. They both have that deadpan nasally delivery, with Craig being voiced by Matt and Clyde being voiced by Trey.
Why can't you behave?
I don't know.
Why did you do it?
I don't know.
Both Craig and Clyde are also often very selfish, primarily looking out for their best interest.
This is everyone that wanted to help Kyle? Clyde was gonna come too, but he said his mom was making tacos for dinner, and Clyde likes tacos a whole lot.
Craig and Clyde, they're similar on the surface, but there are undeniable distinctions between the two. Craig is stoic, intelligent, and put together. Clyde...
Owie, owie.
Yeah, one of Clyde's understated yet ever-present character traits is that he's very much prone to bursting into tears when times get rough. Beyond just being a funny, recurring part of Clyde's personality, it actually informs a lot about how he operates. Again, both Craig and Clyde generally try to stay away from too much conflict, but while Craig's avoidance is more so based in cold, hard logic, observing the situation at hand and weighing whether it makes sense for him to even get involved, Clyde tends to stay away or bail because he's just kinda lazy. In Make Love Not Warcraft, when the boys are planning a way to defeat Noob's Poner, Clyde pretty much gives up hope before they even get started.
We can't beat him, even with all of us. It's a waste of time. Dude, we have to try. I've got better things to do.
Cartman tries to convince him, but Clyde says he's just gotta stop playing the game altogether. Eventually, he is reluctantly convinced, but when the time comes to actually make things happen, he seemed to have better things to do.
Clyde! Clyde, you asshole! God damn it, we lost Clyde!
Clyde will do just about anything to take the easiest path forward. We see this in Deep Learning, where he relies on ChatGPT to generate romantic texts to Bebe and write his essays for him in class. Of course, he wasn't the only one using ChatGPT in that episode, but they introduced the idea through him for a reason. Most recently, in Gotta Nut, we saw him parroting alt-right talking points for his podcast as a grift, completely rage-baiting the whole school and gaining a ton of notoriety for it.
Whatever, guys. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Ultimately, though, he never really believed in any of the things he was saying. He was just doing it because it was an easy way for him to make money to pay for his subscription services. By the end of the episode, after being invited to Mar-a-Lago, he gets burnt out from the grifting and comes to his senses, realizing that the money and clout wasn't worth it at all. Honestly, visiting Mar-a-Lago probably sobered him up a lot. This wake-up call for Clyde underlines two important pillars of his character. For starters, Clyde is very much true to his beliefs. He couldn't keep up the podcast because it wasn't authentic to who he is. But once he gets his mind legitimately set on something, he is very passionate about it, and it's hard for him to waver. In Douche and Turd, when the South Park Cows mascot gets replaced, Clyde takes it harder than anybody. The whole school is upset, but Clyde is especially bummed out. He'd been hiding a South Park Cows t-shirt under his coat the entire episode, and he's the first one to get hyped when they reveal the cow mascot will return. His passion for his beliefs can also bleed into unwavering stubbornness, best seen in the post-COVID specials, 40 entire years into the future. In post-COVID, the town of South Park is quarantined, and the sole reason is that Clyde never got vaccinated. He is the only one. Everyone tries to convince him to get vaccinated so they can all go home, but he just shrugs it off.
Nah, I don't wanna.
He partially uses a medical excuse, claiming he's allergic to shellfish and that he read there could be cross-contamination in the vaccine.
So you're saying you won't take the COVID vaccine out of shellfishness? Yes, that is correct. Just a general sense of selfishness.
Wendy tries to trick him by disguising the vaccine as cocaine. Clyde is completely on board with this, right up until he catches on to what's actually happening, and that's where he draws the line. Cocaine? Sure. Vaccine? Hell no.
My body is a temple, and I'm not taking that shit!
Return of COVID escalates things further. Every time the crew gets close to solving the larger problem at hand, Clyde's unvaccinated status cuts them off at the knees over and over again. He holds firm no matter what, now citing that some guy once told him he'd grow titties titties on his head if he'd got the shot. This is where Cartman steps in, and this is a relationship we'll be talking about more in a bit. Cartman weaponizes Clyde's own stubbornness against him. Now, this is an attempt to stop Stan, Kyle, and everyone else from time traveling for Cartman's own personal reasons, but he recruits Clyde and uses his feeling of being ostracized for his beliefs to point him in the direction that Cartman wants. Cartman does not have a hard time manipulating him here. He latches on to the most stubborn part of his worldview and he uses it for his own gain.
Who's science? Who's fucking coming up with all this science? Yeah, that's true.
Clyde gets manipulated so hard here that he's convinced he has to kill Kyle in the past to fix everything. That's how unwavering he can get. It turns out he was actually the one who told his own past self about growing titties on his head in the first place. He truly built his own prison. The belief that kept him unvaccinated for 40 years, the thing he held on to against all evidence and pressure, originated from himself. Even crazier when you consider his future self didn't even explain who he was. As far as young Clyde was concerned, some random guy barged into his house and told him he'll grow titties on his head if he gets vaccinated, and he just went along with that for the rest of his life. And right on cue, the Lil Cuties, a group of kids who believe in QAnon, show up to recruit him immediately after this.
Fuck yes, I want to join you.
Clyde has always been susceptible to conspiracy theories and manipulative tactics. He was legitimately enthralled by Cartman's 9/11 presentation and repeats his dad's climate change denial as well. We see his gullibility play out even more in Not Suitable for Children. Instead of a big conspiracy theory, this time Clyde completely folds under basic influencer tactics. He watches an influencer named Logan LaDouche, a clear parody of guys like Logan Paul, who tries to act relatable to their younger audience. It's very on the nose, but Clyde eats it right up.
Stupid boomers. People over 40 don't know how hard it is for young people.
Yeah.
The moment LaDouche tells his audience to smash that like button, Clyde smashes it. Every time. Clyde is in so deep that he literally refers to Logan LaDouche as his influencer with complete sincerity. Logan LaDouche peddles Cred, a trendy sports drink that's all over South Park Elementary, and again, a clear parody of Logan Paul's Prime. Clyde is not even allowed to drink Cred, but he's already so bought in that he walks around school pretending anyways. He's fanatical for a product he does not even have access to. Cartman welcomes him into his Cred affinity group alongside Butters and Tweak, weird group, but sure. In an attempt to keep up the charade, Clyde follows some bathroom graffiti pointing him towards a potential Cred source, which brings him to Nathan, who's dealing Cred bottles during recess at $65-80 a pop. Clyde ends up with an empty bottle for $3, fills it up with apple juice just to keep up the ruse, and it doesn't work very long.
What the fuck? This is fucking apple juice.
Eventually, Logan LaDouche announces a mega Cred giveaway, and Clyde immediately rallies the group to ditch school and chase it in order to restore their Cred. The event is a complete bloodbath. They get nothing. But what's interesting is Clyde actually steps back and sees the whole machine clearly, probably for the first time in his life. The manufactured scarcity, the mass hysteria, the influencer deliberately engineering desperation in his audience for profit, Clyde sees right through all of it. While it's a sharp deduction for Clyde, it is worth noting that he only really woke up after he had already been burned so many times. It took him being pushed to the edge to finally point out the problem, and even after identifying the manipulation, he still goes back to showing off his Cred by the end of the episode to save face, lest he become a pariah. So while he sees through the facade, he would rather take the route with the least amount of friction at the end of the day. Granted, he does genuinely enjoy the drink, so that helps. By contrast, in the case of the Clyde Donovan podcast, while he undoubtedly could have continued the grift and made his nut, so to speak, I think it's fair to say that all of the attention from that crowd wasn't worth the squeeze for him. Which leads me to the other hidden layer of Clyde's character, which is, despite his selfishness and ignorance, he does have a moral compass sometimes. We see this play out most in his first central episode, Licecapades. Well, I say central episode, but the show splits its attention between him and an elaborate disaster movie parody playing out on his scalp in real time via his lice. South Park, always normal.
Who put you in charge? God did. When he killed my wife.
The lice storyline takes up a significant chunk of the runtime, making Clyde function as a setting as much as a protagonist, but still, he has a nice personal arc in this one. Clyde finds out he has lice and immediately panics about being exposed. Being the kid with lice means being the kid who gets ripped on. When Cartman starts pressuring the class to out whoever has it, Garrison shuts it down, stating they're not allowed to say who has lice. Everyone starts pointing fingers, and Clyde is seemingly the most rattled person in the room. Eventually, Cartman's investigation lands on Kenny, and the kids plan a forced sock bath attack on him. With this, Clyde's guilt sets in. He knows Kenny is about to take a beating for something that isn't true, and he has a clear opportunity to step up and take ownership. And he almost does, but he doesn't. He's too afraid of the backlash and can't step up quite that much. But there is nuance to this. Clyde doesn't just let it happen, he actually tips off Garrison to get to the park in time to stop the attack before it goes down. It's a compromise that is completely in character. Clyde is not willing to sacrifice his own reputation and do the hard thing, but he's also not willing to watch an innocent kid get a violent sock bath on his behalf. He finds the option that protects him and Kenny simultaneously, even if it's a slightly cowardly way to do it. Or is it a more efficient way to do it? Depends on how you look at it, I guess. There's that one quote that says, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." Maybe this is that. At the very least, it says something that this passes for conscience with Clyde. There's a threshold for how far his selfishness will take him. The twist, of course, is that everyone in class had lice, and it recontextualizes the entire thing with some dark comic irony. Clyde spent the entire episode in silent terror about being singled out, and it turns out every single one of his classmates was going through the exact same internal crisis. Nobody was innocent, nobody was going to say anything. The thing he was so desperate to hide was never really a secret worth keeping in the first place. It's fascinating that Clyde is the only one visibly struggling with the guilt as the sock bath initially ensues, knowing that everyone else was just as guilty. That is, other than Kyle, ever the voice of reason, who is the first to actually speak up. Though even then, Kyle did initially start joining in on the sock bath before backing out, and continued even after the reveal. Clyde couldn't even bring himself to do it in the first place, and as far as we know, it's not like anyone else called Garrison or some other adult to step in and stop the sock bath, so points for Clyde, I guess? There is a smaller act of potential selflessness in Mystery of the Urinal Deuce as well. Mr. Mackey becomes consumed with identifying who left a dookie in the urinal, and for reasons the episode never fully explains, Clyde steps forward and tries to take the fall, or at the very least he was blamed for it but never outright denies it. Clyde finds the whole urinal situation as funny as everyone else does, so maybe it was just an attempt to get one more laugh out of it by inserting himself into the mess, or it could be that he genuinely just wanted the hunt to end. His reasoning here is harder to pin down, and the show doesn't really try to pin it down either. And it's later revealed that Clyde couldn't have done it. He apparently had a colostomy at age 5, which ends up being contradicted later in the series, but I'm not about to sit here and analyze the canonicity of Clyde's colon. Regardless, Clyde clearly is capable of stepping up for the greater good in a pinch, but only when it's convenient to do so and doesn't require too much effort on his end.
That was your one goddamn job, Clyde!
Clyde's dynamic with the main 4 boys is somewhat similar to Craig's, friendly but also a little contentious. Of course, he's part of Craig's core friend group, so that tracks, but Clyde develops his own separate sort of rivalries with the boys as well. It starts pretty small early on in Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride, where Stan's dog Sparky humps his dog Rex. Then in Cartman's Silly Hate Crime 2000, while Cartman is in prison, Clyde is chosen as the fat kid for the sledding competition and gets brutally ripped on the way Cartman had previously, primarily by Stan and Kyle. Clyde tries to deny being the second fattest kid, but all the roasting gets to him, which ironically pushes him even further into the Cartman role.
For the last time, I'm not fat, so stop calling me fat, goddammit!
In Professor Chaos, he was one of the potential candidates to replace Kenny and makes it past the first round, but he's cut shortly after that. He calls the boys out for how dumb it is to try and make friends through a shallow competition, and he's right, but let's be real, he wouldn't have been butthurt about it if he ended up winning.
Kiss my fudge and ass, go fudge yourself, fudge you get the fudge out, Clyde.
This type of back and forth between Cartman and Clyde would go on to be something of a staple. It's well established that everyone hates Cartman, but Clyde and Cartman specifically seem to have a particularly tumultuous relationship.
Thank you, High Elf of Paragon. Paragon, asshole. Are you French, Clyde? No. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi, Clyde? Fuck are you doing? You just let a Mexican through! I was enthralled with the dialogue exchange.
In fact, it's revealed in Fractured But Whole that Clyde is number 3 on Cartman's shit list, just under Leanne and Kyle. That's quite the honor, being so close to Kyle on a list like that. Clyde would actually take on the main antagonist role in Stick of Truth, thanks in large part to Cartman. He ironically sided with Cartman and the Wizards against the Elves, running the shop at Koopa Keep, but here, Cartman treats him like a punching bag, forcing him to help the new kid practice and making fun of him as he gets beat up.
Dude, that was smash him! You were all like, beam, and Clyde was all like, nah.
This back and forth finally comes to a head when Cartman banishes Clyde from space and time. It's here where he turns on not just the wizards, but everybody, including the rival elves led by Kyle. He steals the Stick of Truth and forges his own kingdom as the ruler of darkness. And in a bit of a role reversal, Craig becomes his right-hand man. Clyde takes the game a little too far, using actual nuclear waste to create an army of Nazi zombies, including from Chef's corpse. I mean, Nazifying the corpse of their dead friend just for revenge, he might be as determined as Cartman, come to think of it. Clyde is usually pretty incompetent, but he makes for a formidable opponent here, serving as a major obstacle during the final act of the game. I mean, he did think the toxic waste was just Taco Bell green sauce, but still. Of course, he's bested in the end, but for someone who usually takes the path of least resistance, it's pretty crazy to see what he's capable of when he does things out of spite. Cartman and Clyde's beef would continue in the superhero trilogy, where Clyde joins the crew as Mosquito.
Why can't it be Mosquito and friends?
Nobody's fucking heard of you, Mosquito!
When Cartman proposes blackmailing Captain Hindsight to get one up on him, Clyde pushes back with something genuinely constructive. Instead of this, let's do a bake sale to raise funds for the BP oil spill relief. It's a small idea, but it's the right one, and more importantly, it's Clyde recognizing that the group could actually do some good while also building their reputation. Plus, it's a lot easier than Cartman's idea. Clyde's mom would be doing all the baking, and much like in Licecapades, it's a moral good that has just the right balance of heroism, payoff, and lack of effort. Though, to Clyde's credit, he takes it even further from here. He calls Cartman out for mistreating Mintberry Crunch, challenges all of his plans directly, and proposes a voting system so Cartman can't just steamroll everyone. The group naturally sides with Clyde here, unanimously even, and for a brief moment, Clyde actually redirected the entire operation towards something legitimate. But of course, Cartman's response is to just straight up physically attack him out of nowhere, with Bradley getting caught in the crossfire. It's a petty, desperate move from a narcissist who just got outmaneuvered. Classic Cartman. He gets the one-up on them for a day, but it backfires shortly after as the group kicks Cartman out of his own superhero team entirely. So in a real sense, Clyde standing up to Cartman here is one of the many inciting incidents that drives the superhero trilogy forward. Not the larger Cthulhu cult plot, of course, but the dynamic of Cartman flying solo as a villain, which probably would have happened at some point anyway, but Clyde was the one who was willing to put himself out there this time around. Clyde would continue to push against Cartman throughout the series. Obviously, the other kids would as well, though pointedly in Skink Hunt, Clyde is the first one to suggest the boys break all of Cartman's devices, presuming Cartman to be the elusive internet troll that they're all looking for. This ended up being incorrect, but it's worth noting that between this episode, Stick of Truth, and the superhero trilogy, Clyde really only tends to successfully rally people together as a leader when it comes to sticking it to Cartman, which does actually paint a picture as to why Clyde is number 3 on Cartman's shit list. We talked a bit about Got a Nut earlier, but that episode also pits Clyde against Cartman. As mentioned, Clyde starts an alt-right podcast spewing all types of inflammatory stuff, but in reality, he's just saying the types of things Cartman has been saying for years at this point, and Cartman is not having it.
That's my shtick! Knock it out, Clyde! You stole my idea!
Kyle even calls him a fat ass, which lands as both a pointed comparison, but also as a likely unintentional callback to when Clyde literally inherited that label from Cartman in the sledding competition. Full circle, huh? Despite Cartman's protesting and going on to form his own podcast, it's still Clyde who walks away with the accolades. Cartman does everything right by his own playbook and loses to the guy who was never even serious about it to begin with. While we know Clyde quit because he didn't want to be a right-wing grifter anymore, I think you could argue it's deeper than that for him, because not only was he standing for values he didn't truly believe in, but those values are ones that Cartman did believe in. He was becoming Cartman again, which definitely did not sit right with him. Though Cartman and Clyde are at each other's throats a lot, it's worth noting they also seem to be friends, like beyond the general vibe that all the boys in class are friends. But Clyde, tends to align with Cartman fairly often. He's one of the few that joins Cartman when he goes to Somalia to become a pirate. He's part of Cartman's lucrative Crybaby basketball business. He's in that Cred affinity group, the ChatGPT group, Team Xbox in the Black Friday trilogy, the Wizards in Stick of Truth, and he invites Cartman to come to Casa Bonita at the end of the vaccination special. Yeah, the Casa Bonita. Probably the funniest moment of Clyde being Team Cartman is in Margarine, where the boys are discussing the girl's fortune teller device. Cartman hosts an emergency meeting about it, but Kyle is especially skeptical, doubting the entire thing. It's here that Clyde steps in to defend Cartman, complete with a British accent, like they're in a medieval war room.
You, sir, mocked Cartman before, yet you two sit here demanding answers. Now damn you, let him speak!
This bizarre outburst even throws Cartman off.
Thank you, Clyde.
Their alliances may be frequent, but they're also fragile. In Return of COVID, when Clyde goes back in time to stop Kyle, it's Cartman who, after a change of heart, ultimately kills Clyde. It's a pretty dark but perfect culmination of their years-long hatred of each other, except this time, it's Cartman on the side of heroism. What a character arc for that version of Cartman. Rest in peace to both of them, I guess. We know that in the good future timeline at the end of the special, Cartman actually ends up with the bad ending, but notably, Clyde is nowhere to be found in this version of the future. Theoretically, Cartman only killed Clyde from the old future, so Clyde should still be out there somewhere. Hopefully the change in the space-time continuum gives him a little bit of a better outcome somehow. So what exactly is the nature of Cartman and Clyde's relationship? Well, it's clearly complicated, which could be said about most relationships in South Park. There's undoubtedly animosity between the two, and yet Clyde keeps accidentally becoming Cartman or taking his side, but simultaneously he'll also consistently stand up to him and occasionally redirect an entire group dynamic just by refusing to go along with whatever Cartman wants. But hey, even Kyle and Cartman get along from time to time, and Kyle was number 1 on that shit list. Actually, speaking of lists,
Hey, Clyde.
Hey.
Clyde has had one of the more storied dating lives in South Park Elementary. This starts out in clubhouses, where Bebe ditches Kyle for Clyde, though Kyle had zero interest in Bebe to begin with, and was more or less oblivious to the whole thing. Clyde, on the other hand, was all about it.
I'll never forget you. Never. Okay, Clyde, we can go now.
Bitched.
Kyle's tune on this would change in Bebe's Boobs Destroy Society, where all the boys in class fight over Bebe after she starts puberty. Not only are Clyde and Bebe no longer together here, but Clyde seems to barely remember them dating in the first place.
Yeah, I've never really noticed before, but that girl Bebe's kinda cool.
Imagine saying this about your ex. Fittingly though, Clyde is actually the first boy to turn into a caveman over Bebe. Even more fittingly, it's over his fight with Kyle over who should teach her how to throw rocks. Matt and Trey clearly didn't remember what happened in clubhouses, so this is probably just another one of those coincidental callbacks, but it's pretty funny that it happened twice pretty quickly. The class eventually snaps out of their trance, but this wouldn't be the end of Clyde's romance with Bebe. In the list, the boys catch wind of a list the girls made ranking the cuteness of each boy.
You think they rate us just for looks or they take personality into account? If it's just looks, then I think I'm safe.
They get their hands on the list, and who else is at the number 1 spot but our boy Clyde? As expected, it immediately goes to his head, max up all the girls, confidence through the roof. Kyle is revealed to be dead last on the list, which, man, what is up with the Clyde and Kyle romance rivalries? I don't think they meant to do that, but it's clearly a pattern. While Kyle goes through an existential crisis over his placement on the list, Clyde gives him a passive-aggressive pep talk that's really just a thinly veiled excuse for him to stroke his own ego.
Abraham Lincoln was super ugly too, but look what he accomplished. Chin up, cowboy.
Chin up cowboy is brutal, man. You better be careful or he's gonna catch one on the chin. Unfortunately for Clyde, his attractiveness was a bit overstated. Wendy uncovers a conspiracy in which Clyde was bumped up the list because Clyde's dad owns the shoe store at the mall. So now Bebe is dating him once again, primarily so she can score great deals on shoes. Turns out that Clyde was actually in the bottom 5. This episode reveals one of Clyde's fatal flaws. He's a little bit girl crazy. As soon as he found out he was number 1, he got swept up in the ego boost and made his whole life about getting girls, as pointed out by Honest Abe himself. In The Hobbit, he dates Lisa Berger based entirely on a photoshopped picture. He even whips out the photo and shows it off to the other guys while she is literally standing right next to him. Once again, it seems that he and Bebe are no longer together here, but there's never a big moment where they break up or anything. Though, speaking of breakups, all the girls in relationships break up with all the boys in relationships in Skank Hunt, Clyde being among them. We see him crying in the library with a breakup note, though the note does not say who it was from, so we presume this is either Lisa Berger or Bebe, depending on what the writers remembered that day. In Fractured But Whole, he literally has a kryptonite-esque weakness to the Raisins girls. They draw him in and completely manipulate him, a perfect showcase of Clyde's gullibility and also his desire for chicks. The new kid has to basically free him from the Raisins' hold on him throughout multiple missions. Then, again in Deep Learning, he is definitively back with Bebe, so they've been off and on behind the scenes from season 2 all the way up to when ChatGPT was invented. I guess him being bottom 5 couldn't stop him, huh? For as girl crazy as Clyde can be, he doesn't want to be bothered with the responsibilities of the relationship, so he outsources ChatGPT to respond to all of Bebe's texts and produce a level of romantic depth that Clyde could never produce on his own.
Super easy and convenient, and it saves me a ton of time because she texts me so goddamn much. Jesus Christ!
This probably explains why they've been so on again, off again, doesn't it? A lot of these dating tendencies can actually be boiled down to Clyde's aforementioned laziness and pattern of wanting to do the easy thing. Relationships require a lot more effort than Clyde is typically willing to deal with. Pretty much every romantic situation he gravitates towards is one where someone else is doing the heavy lifting. Bebe pursuing him first, Raisins girls being paid to make him feel special, Lisa Berger's low self-esteem doing a lot of the heavy lifting, ChatGPT handling the emotional labor, and that on again, off again with Bebe across 2 decades of television probably comes down to the same thing. When it's easy, he's in. When it requires something from him, he finds a shortcut or disappears until the next time it falls into his lap. His tendency to find shortcuts affects more than his dating life though, bleeding directly into his family life as well. The Donovans seem like a healthy enough family, for the most part. They aren't particularly special, but they do end up playing relatively significant roles in a few episodes. For starters, they're the first ones to reveal that Slash isn't real. That's pretty heavy series-defining info right there. They mostly serve as background characters, chiming in on occasion, but season 16's reverse cowgirl is where they get a bit more of a spotlight. It's one of the more somber episodes from Clyde's perspective. Clyde gets yelled at by his mom, Betsy, for leaving the toilet seat up again, with again being key here. She berates him in front of the boys, which adds an extra layer of frustration and embarrassment for him. Cartman is the first person to try and comfort Clyde after the whole ordeal, and of course, he is also the first one to blab about it at school.
And Clyde's all like, okay, Mom, fuck, not in front of my fridge.
Clyde's humiliation doesn't end there. Betsy storms into the classroom later, once again getting on his case for leaving the toilet seat up, even pulling him out of class to go back home and put it down. Cartman eats this up, of course. But in a sick twist, Betsy actually does end up falling in the toilet after Clyde, yet again, leaves the toilet seat up. Apparently, the suction from the toilet flush is creating so much pressure that there's nothing they can do to save her, as disconnecting the toilet will essentially rip her organs out of her body. Jesus Christ. Before they disconnect the toilet, Betsy lets Clyde know that she doesn't blame him and that she should have been harder on him for leaving the toilet seat up. Not sure if that was a lesson here, but that's what she went with. Regardless, she does not make it.
Bob.
Absolutely insane way to satirize the whole toilet seat debate, and of course, very funny. Quick side note, Betsy actually mentions that Clyde should be more careful about putting the toilet seat down for his sister, a character we'd never see. Though there is a deleted scene at the funeral where a girl is singing about Betsy looking down on her, so maybe that was intended to be his sister. Some people have also speculated that his sister might be this woman next to him and his father at the funeral, implying maybe his sister is much older than him and living on her own, hence why we never see her. Either way, the whole town uses Betsy's passing as a launch pad for the classic toilet seat debate. We know that Clyde is already prone to guilt, so his own carelessness leading to his mother's death naturally does not sit great with him. And it doesn't help that basically every woman in South Park blames him specifically.
There's a little boy here who has lost his mother because he couldn't take that 0.6 of a second to put the toilet seat down when he was done peeing. Now little Clyde's mother is dead, and the blood is on his penis.
Of course, most of the men think Betsy's death was her own fault and she could have just looked where she was sitting. Towards the end of the episode, when the toilet seat debate has hit the court system, Betsy returns as a ghost. She doesn't decide to stop the fighting or give Clyde any loving words of encouragement from beyond the grave. Her first move is to berate him again. It turns out that everyone was sitting on toilets wrong to begin with anyways. Clyde wasn't even the problem no matter how you slice it. But rather than take the win gracefully, he flips the toilet seat up one more time out of pure spite and gives his dead mother the finger. There's that vengeful Clyde we've come to know. This is the most we see of Betsy and Clyde's relationship. I don't think he actually hates his mom or anything, despite the ending here, but Clyde's frustration over his mom's death and her subsequent yelling at him as a ghost is pretty understandable. In Betsy's defense, Clyde is likely a difficult kid to discipline. I would imagine Clyde ignores a lot of requests around the house. His dad, Roger, on the other hand, seems rather passive about everything. When Betsy is freaking out at the school, he kinda just tries to wrangle her, but very timidly. Like he still went with her to the school instead of outright talking her down from causing a scene. Even when she dies, he's a bit taken aback at first, but there's no big show of emotion, no visible grief. At the funeral, he doesn't emote really at all. He just seems disinterested most of the time. Not in a rude way, just very nonchalant. He's like the personification of a shrug. This seems to continue a little bit in Not Suitable for Children. With Betsy gone, Clyde's dad is now with a woman named Janice. She seems patient, warm, and wanting to genuinely connect with him, and Clyde absolutely cannot stand her. When she and his dad explain that they won't let him drink cred because they want what's best for him, it seems like Janice is the one leading the conversations. Roger is agreeing and still disciplining Clyde when he gets out of hand, but Janice is the one that seems to have a stronger point of view on the issue. Pointedly, when Betsy used to discipline Clyde, he would withdraw, afraid to set her off even further. That is, until the very end of Reverse Cowgirl, where he flips her off, but she was already dead at that point, so not much she could have done. On the contrary, with Janice's more gentle approach, Clyde lets all his feelings fly. He is not afraid to curse her out and disrespect her perceived authority over him.
You're not even my real mom, Janice, so why don't you shut the fuck up?
Clyde didn't really listen to his actual mom either, but he did so more out of neglect and laziness than malice when she was alive. I think here you could argue we're seeing a little bit of bottled up grief and guilt over his mother's death, maybe even residual anger over how Betsy came at his neck as a spirit. It's not necessarily personal to Janice, she's just the one getting in the way of what he wants at that moment, while trying to slide into the mother role as well. It's a tough spot. And as it turns out, it was Janice who orchestrated the entire cred conspiracy to begin with. Logan LaDouche, the artificial scarcity, all of it, all just to find a way to connect with Clyde. Further evidence that Roger was just a passive enforcer of Janice's will more than anything. He actually didn't even know anything about Janice's plan. It's absurd and desperate, but it comes from a completely sincere place for Janice. She said she wanted to be a good influence on Clyde, so she resorted to a literal influencer to do so. And it kinda works.
Can I call you Mom?
Yes, of course.
Fuck you, Mom!
It's progress, given that his relationship with his actual mother essentially ended with him giving her the finger through the other side. Fuck you, Mom from Clyde might genuinely be a sign of a breakthrough. Clyde's relationship with his parents is interesting. It definitely makes me wonder if Roger's general apathy was an influence for Clyde's shortcutting. Meanwhile, Betsy's occasional emotional outbursts may have informed Clyde's emotional cracks under pressure or more spiteful patterns. He doesn't seem to be able to hold space for difficult emotions or obstacles, which may be in part due to Betsy and Roger's polar opposite parenting styles. While both parents clearly care for Clyde and try their best, Roger appears emotionally unavailable and Betsy is likely emotionally unstable, at least somewhat. Maybe over time, he'll be able to bond with Janice, though I'm not sure her methods are for the best either. It might just end up messing that kid up even more. At first glance, Clyde Donovan doesn't stand out all that much, and for a long stretch of the show's run, he was sort of a filler character, but the more time you spend with him, the more a surprisingly coherent portrait emerges. Not a flattering one exactly, but it is there. Clyde is not a bad person. That's the thing the show keeps returning to. He's selfish, impressionable, and allergic to doing things the hard way. When no shortcut exists, he will either cry, quit, or become a high fantasy supervillain. But underneath all of that is someone with a genuine conscience and values. Misguided values at times, but values. A capacity for good things. It just usually takes being pushed to the absolute limit before any of that surfaces. What makes him work as a character is that all of his contradictions trace back to the same source. The laziness, the susceptibility to manipulation, the inability to sustain a relationship, the spiteful streak, none of it exists in isolation. They all seem to represent someone who has never really been taught how to sit with discomfort. Clyde's way of taking the easy way out is relatable at his age, but certainly not aspirational. The tragedy is that it seems as though he never fully grows out of this immature approach to life. He doesn't go down the worst path, but he's a cautionary tale of what can happen when you stay stagnant and refuse to grow up, particularly when looking at those future episodes. Clyde is just a kid who wants things to be simple and easy, but the world reminds him time and time again that for better or worse, that's not how life goes.
I hate it here, I wanna go home!
Folks, thanks so much for tuning into another South Park video. This one was actually written by Mykal Williams, who has been helping me out with the channel for a while now. His work is great. This is an excellent script from Mykal. Please check out his other work on his channel Go Play Hero, and stay tuned for more. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.